I only disagree with part of what you're saying. When we look at this situation, I think it's important to not look at the present, but to review the past. We know that our government has a long-standing history of lying to the population to support wars and financial interests overseas. Please remember that deception can be coercive. When it succeeds, it gives power to the deceiver. And we are now at a war with truth. We can look back at our own history to see this. In 1846, the Mexican War, the warship, the USS Maine, was not blown up by Mexico. It was actually an accidental fire, but we used that as an excuse to get into this war so that we could have a land grab. Vietnam and Lyndon B. Johnson. The gunboat was never attacked. It was later found to have been a pot of whales. And the ever so famous George Bush and weapons of mass destruction that we now all know to be false. So when we look at this situation, we shouldn't look at what the government, our government, and the Israeli government is telling us right now. We should look at the history of the matter. Do you believe in the right of colonialism, or do you think it's wrong? Was it wrong what we did to the Native Americans of our country? I think it was. Despite the horrific atrocities that were done to the Jewish people in the Holocaust, it was not for Britain to decide to take a land that was inhabited for centuries and give it to a different group of people. The Bible is not a land grant, and I want us all to be free to worship as we please, but in order for us to do that, we have to recognize that our religious books are not law. If you want the freedom to have your own religion, you must respect others. It was 1922 when the British government issued the Balfour Agreement, giving the land to Israel for the Jewish people to have an ancestral home. This was actually before the Holocaust. And it was thought at the time to be kind of a way of dealing with what they termed as the Jewish problem, because they in fact were racist too. But then in 1948, they displaced 750,000 Palestinian people from their ancestral homes in what is called the Nakba, translated to be the Great Catastrophe. There was a civil conflict at the time, and they were told that after the conflict they could return to their homes, but they were never ever allowed to return to their homes, their family farms, the graves of their past loved ones. Much has been argued on what Zionism is. We do know that violent crime and abuse can be informed on by looking at a person's past and seeing the great traumas that they have experienced, and it is a way of the human psyche of fighting back from that trauma. I believe that Zionism is a trauma response. It is a response of the collective trauma of the incredibly horrific atrocities that took place during the Holocaust. I think that that is what has formed Zionism today as we know it. It has gone beyond what the Jewish religion is, which is a beautiful religion, and it has become something dark. In 1994, Israel began building a wall around Gaza, effectively turning it into a concentration camp, or what many are terming it as a open-air prison. Israel began controlling all of the water, food, goods, medical supplies in 1967, but after the construction of the wall, this control was complete. A people that live behind a wall and cannot even control their own access to water or food, how can we call them an aggressor and not just a defender? If you were locked away illegally and your access to food and water was controlled, what would you do? I'm a person who never wants to see violence or loss of life. I don't believe in capital punishment, even for the worst murderer. And so I obviously am horrified by what people were driven to do in defense of their existence. I hope that as I've spoken these words, you've contemplated the 212 pages of names of the victims of Israel. These were civilians, over 10,000, half of which were children. Nearly half of the population of Gaza were not born when Hamas was elected in 2006. These are innocent people who are not in control of their destiny. And that is why we should give them a free Palestine. We should all be in control of our own destiny.